In my third year of university, I landed a competitive position a.k.a. internship at one of the big four global accounting firms. And although I have decided not to pursue accounting, having this firm on my resume has opened a lot of doors for me in the corporate world, including a short stint as a poster child for my business school. Now, at the time, they weren't even actively recruiting from my university. In fact, I wasn't even in an accounting program, I was studying business and IT. So, how did I land this job? In this blog post, I'll talk you through each step of the interview process at the big firm, while using snippets of my own story to show you how to crush your own job interviews. Pre-interview. Here's a secret of successful interviews now. 80% of the work required to succeed in an interview is achieved before the actual interview. The pre-interview tips are designed to help you prepare and relax so that when you get to the interview, it'll seem more like a conversation and less like an interrogation. Mindset. I used to walk in a room and wonder if they liked me. Now I look around and wonder if I like them. Harvey Specter, Suits. 1. Understand what an interview is. An interview is a conversation between two people who have things to exchange. Come to the interview table with the mindset of I want to see if there's a good fit between us, and you'll feel more confident. 2. Consider the hiring manager perspective. Keep in mind that even if you are desperate for a job, the company is almost as anxious to find someone capable to hire. Most companies need to attack the best talent, but don't have their pick. Even at Google, the talent war is real. And with a pro tip that will help boost your confidence. The hiring manager wants to hire someone who will make them look good in front of their boss. If you can show them that you are that person, then you'll be exponentially more successful if you interviews. With those two perspectives in mind, here's how I went about preparing for my interview at the accounting firm. General preparation. I don't have dreams, I have goals. Harvey Speaker Suits. 3. You use your school career planning researches. Way before I applied for this specific position, I went through a lot of preparing, including mock interview. Before I applied to the accounting job, my co-programs scheduled a mock interview for me with someone in the financial industry. This mock interview helped me get the jitters out and organize how I told my story in an interview. More on that later. Ultimately, it led me to my first full-time summer job, summer critical. If I hadn't gone through to resume writing classes, I doubt I would have known about how embarrassingly bad my resume was. You can see my current resume and learn what mistakes to avoid when writing your own here. Portfolio review. Get a professor or someone in the industry to critique your work or create as fancy art school students call them, especially if you are applying for a creative role like graphic designer or a digital artist. Caveat, I didn't have to do this myself. Since I was applying for a technical role. 4. Leverage connections. This is a key step as soon as submitted my resume and cover letter. I contacted someone I know at the company to ask what the company was like. And if he could recommend me to the recruiter who was sorting jobs all the resumes. My contact agreed to drop my name to the recruiter, and this helped me get into the first round. I recorded a video interview, and assuming I meant is if passed the video interview. I made sure to get in the phone with the recruiter to get some details about the in-person interview. My contact also put me in touch with two students who had worked at the company the previous summer, and they told me all about the in-person interview process, which considers of a 35-minute case interview and two 30-minute interview with others. How if you don't know anyone at the company you're working for? Here a handful of ways you can make that connection. Ask your school career center for a first of alumni who have worked at the company. See each point reach out to an alumni or student degree contact on LinkedIn. Ask your network of family and friends if they know someone who worked there. 5. Prepare to answer classic interview questions. Interviews have enough unknown variables to potentially throw you off. Because of this, you should try to prepare for as many of the known variables as you can. They are questions like, tell me about yourself. What your greatest weakness? What your biggest strengths? Tell me about the time you overcame a challenge. The thing is, you can crack almost any interview as long as you have a good answer to the tell me about yourself question. Don't make it chronological. Instead, pick three qualities and tell one story for each. Because it's given, then you don't have a ton of experience. Of most students' positions, those the qualities are unafraid to approach people and ask questions, pick things up quickly, eager to learn the job, company, industry. Once you have your three stories, you can use them as jumping off points to answer the other questions. All you have to do is use parts of your stories and elaborate on those to answer most questions. 6. Have data hard numbers to back up what you've done. Similar to no numbers give your resume credence. Having solid data, have an interview story helps give it weight. Your numbers don't have to be point accurate, but do make sure that they are verifiable and that the important points check out. Just in case the hiring manager decides to do some fact checking. For example, at the company I work at now, one candidate failed the interview because he constantly or unconsciously witched the genders of someone who was involved in a story he told to the interviews. Although it might have been an insignificant detail, the change made him seem dishonest to the decision-making panel. 7. Practice and actually pretend they are answering the question. Look yourself in your room and say your response to the questions. Make sure you keep your stories short. Here's a good framework to build your stories around. Say your point, tell the story, say your point again. For example, I am someone who asks a lot of questions to make sure I get the job done right. At my last job, they asked me to create a document of all the equipment serial numbers we had in the office. I assumed that they meant the head office and not any of the other overseas ones, but I asked just to make sure I got it right. It turns out that my manager was referring to the UK office, and because she had just transferred from the UK, she forgot to specify it. Good thing I asked, because I would have spent a few weeks documenting the equipment for the wrong office. So yes, I'm not afraid to ask questions to make sure that I fully understand the job before I get started. 8. Have a list reference. And make sure you have their permission to use them. This is a list of 2 or 3 people who know you well, not just people who will sing your praises and who can vouch for your skills. Have their full names, email address, and phone number typed up or written down in a sheet of paper, so that you can just hand it over to the interviewer and they ask for it. I've personally never been asked for a list of references during an interview, but I have heard of it happening with other candidates. 9. Have an interview kit with materials you need, and some redundancy just in case. This kit should include a couple of extra copies of your resume, your list of references, a notebook and pen, and maybe a bottle of water so you make sure your throat doesn't run dry before the interview. Job specific preparation. A good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judge. Now what you have a general list of things you need for every interview. It's time to get into the weeds and prepare for these specific interviews. 10. Know will be interviewing you and then research them. Okay, definitely don't be creepy, but it's time to check out their professional profile, their LinkedIn, personal website, or company bio. Even just knowing their position at the company helps. For myself, one of my interviewers was a partner at the firm. And the other one was an associate director, which is just a half step below partner. Both of them were about my parents' age. While knowing the things about them made me nervous how hiked up they were. They also helped me know how to approach the interview with more formality and respect than if the interviewers were closer at my age. 11. Ask about the interview format in advance. This is important to know because there are different types of considerations. For example, software developers often go without a technical interview before a behavioral one. Then go on site visits, and sometimes the interviews can go on for many rounds with individuals or groups of interviewers. For my case, there was a recorded video interview before an in-person one. During the in-person interview, there was a 35-minute case analysis their business scenario and they have to answer no it. Before to separate 30-minute interviews with their partners. Knowing this helped me have the right mindset going into the interview. I know it was going to be long and I mentally armed myself. 12. Arrange for your if possible. This is often a part of the interview itself because the recruiter or hiring manager will have to take you out less some of their office on your way to your interview or out of it. But if not, request for this in advance as it's a good way to meet more people and show you interested in the company position. 30. Prepare your briefcase technically. The briefcase technically is an advanced level job interview strategy. With this technically, you walk into an interview with a ready-made plan or fully written out recommendation in hand and present this during the interview. I didn't do this for my interview by the create positions. This can make or break you. For example, if you're applying to be a web designer for a startup, you can take a lot or their website beforehand and see if you can improve their logo. Mock up illustrations for their blog posts, or even create a wireframe for their site. This way, you are showing them a highly customized sample of your work that helps them see how you fit into their team. See 35 for another similar idea. 14. Score out the location the day before. While this isn't always possible if the interview is in a different city, you can always pull up the venue on Google Maps to pull out your route and make sure you don't get lost. You can even click in Street View and get an idea of what the building and neighborhoods looks like the day of the interview before leaving home. Anyone can buy my job, but no one can be me. Harvard speakers. 15. Get enough sleep. This is a major key. Plus, it's one of the small things you can do that create big rewards. Getting enough sleep means you're more alert and can think on your feet during the interview instead of falling asleep on your feet. 16. Proper grooming. Another simple thing that can be very effective. Get haircut, trim your nails, brush your teeth, take a shower, put on some deodorant, get clean up. 17. Dress the right way. First off, if the company gives specific info on a law to dress, follow that. For example, if part of the interview involved touring a factory, involved close clothing. Otherwise, err one the side of being ever dressed. And then and different consideration for men and women. For example, guys can put on a dress shirt, a skinny tee, dark slacks and blazer, cool socks, and dark leather shoes, and be good to go. At least that's my personal take as a woman. If you are gay reading this, you should definitely check out the podcast episode 1, Dressing Better and Upgrading Your Wardrobe. For girls, generally like makeup. Avoid the multicolored shadow, a pencil skirt, a nice blue and jacket, and black stilettos work best. Dark slacks are fine and are more comfortable, but skirts look cleaner and make a bigger virtual impression, in my opinion. Finally, limit your heels to 4 inches or less. Prioritize function over style as much as you can. And if you are not used to wearing heels, don't try to do it on the day of your interview. A pair of closed-toed flats work well too. 18. Bring a notepad to take notes. Even if you have zero intention to take notes, bring in anyway. You can pretend to take notes to make yourself look smarter. 19. Be hydrated and fit. Just eat something you know won't upset your stomach or case other issue. The key is to feel your best, so you don't have to think about anything else but crushing this interview. It's the interview location. I like to smile at people who don't like me. Harvey speaker suits. 20. Don't walk in wearing headphones. The one is the smell. Quick quiz you can have be walking without headphones. You're free to be present and to pay attention to the office environment. And instead of fumbling with your wires and headphones, you can. 21. Chat with the receptionist and others that you encounter. I've heard stories of people who lost job positions because they were dismissive or rude to the receptionist or secretary. The hiring manager might even actively work with the receptionist for input on what you are like outside on the interview, like what Harvey and Donna do in Suite. This means that where a point of contact that you have with anyone in the company is fair game. So put your best foot forward as soon as you walk into the building. 22. Arrive early. I am to arrive at least 20 minutes before the interview starts, just in case there are detours or unexpected circumstances on the way. Then, call make yourself known to the hiring manager 5-10 minutes before the interview time. This way, you are not interrupting their work too early, while also giving them enough time to wrap up what they're doing and meet you. The interview. During the interview, keep in the mind what hiring manager looking for subtle hints that point to who you are as a person. This means that the interviewer isn't looking at what you say as much as why you say it and how you behave. They want to know if they look good to their bosses if they hire you. You actually want to work in their company and that they are not just another interview out of dozens for you, even if that is the case. They would enjoy working with you. The airport test, if my flight gets delayed and I get stuck in an airport with this person. Will I find it pleasant or excruciating? They can trust you as a human being. This next section will help our exhibit behaviors that hit the right buttons for an interviewer. Competence triggers. I don't play the ads. I play the man. Harvey speaker. Suits. 23. Have a firm handshake. When I walk into the interview from subtly vibe, you possibly clammy, sweaty, hands on your pants or skirt and get ready for the first competence trigger, the handshake. If the interviewer doesn't initiate one, feel free to extend your hand yourself and give their hand one firm shake. They test your grip, grasp your left hand with your right and give yourself a reverence handshake. If it's too tight, limp for you, then chances are the other person will think it is too. Something that helps me get my handshake just right is to make it feel reassuring for the other person. Draft my handshake. I want convey warmth, confidence, and trustworthiness. I don't aim to intimidate them with my crushing grip, nor do I want to make them feel my discomfort or insecurity in the situation. 24. Relax. I know, relaxing in an interview is easy to say, but hard to do. But one thing I will learning from swimming competitive is that practice begets confidence. Here are a couple tactics I use it in my swimming days that you can use to stay relaxed and confident. Remind yourself of the work you've done up front. Practice interviews, research, coffee meetings. If you're done your best to prepare, then you'll do your best at the interview. Which is all that you can ask of yourself, whether or not you get the job. In line with that, ask yourself what's the worst that can happen. More often than not, that means totally bumping the interview and not getting the job. Not fun. But then again, it's not the end of the world either. If you have time, you can also quickly run to the washroom to calm yourself down, have a few quiet moments, and take a few deep breaths. 25. Show you excitement and enthusiasm. Know the feeling when you're finally going on a trip or to a concert that you are always wanted to go to. You should try to get into that hide up state before the interview. You can do that by reminding yourself about how cool the job or company sounds in the job description, or even about all the stuff you can buy once the dust starts rolling in, whatever gets you blood pumping. So before you walk into the interview room, slap on a big grin on your face and reflect your enthusiasm and your 26. Body language. In an interview, you want to come across as confident and personable. How to be more personable will be covered in the next sections. But to accomplish the first one, you need to take up space when you sit and minimize movement. If you are sitting in a chair, lean forward a little. This shows that you are interested. Speaking with your hands is okay, so long as you show down your movements. Don't cross your legs when you sit. Instead, keep both feet flat on the ground to discourage movement while taking up more space. Similarly, keep your hands flat on your lap and not on the interview's desk, or clasp it together with your elbows on the chair's arms. Again, this helps with any unwanted fidgeting or nervous tick, while making you look more confident. How to respond? It's no bragging if it's true. Harvey Specter, suits. 27. Build rapport with the interviewer. This will be easier if you done your research on them, but you can also do it when you make small talk in the beginning of the interview. Ask about how they are and compliments them on their outfit or their office. In the interview is in their office. Ask a look for uncommon commonalities. Stuff that you have in common with them that isn't so easy to spot. Maybe they have a book on their shelf about scuba diving or photography, and you happen to be into these things. Make sure to point that out so you can geek out with them on local drive spots or DCLR camera bodies. 28. Use storytelling. If you took only thing you away from the posts, it should be this. Winning an interview is about telling the right stories in the right way. Two traffic winning responses to interview questions I'm to have. A beginning to introduce the problem what you faced. A middle to tell the interviewer about what you did to solve the problem. An end to highlight the result on your actions. When done well, you can convey a great response in as few as 3 sentences, while keeping the interviewer engaged in the conversation. Dive deeper into using storytelling for interviewers in this podcast episode. 29. Be honest without oversharing. While you want to appear personally in an interview and showcase your personality, an interview is not the time to share all the juicy details of your previous job's politics. Instead, keep it professional. If it's not something that would add value to who they see, you keep out of your story. 30. Stay positive. This is an important point. No matter how crappy your previous job or volunteer experience was, stay on the positive side when you talk about yourself or your previous employers. If your experience was really dead, then you can say something like, my previous job wasn't the best fit for me, and then tell a story about how you made the best of a bad situation. A good interviewer should be able to read between the lines and deduce that the previous place sucked, without you having to go into the gory details. 31. Leave room for spontaneity. While we encouraged you to practice your interview questions, when you get to the interview, don't just spew your canned responses. The purpose of practicing your answers beforehand is so that you can be a bit more spontaneous in the interview. Instead, try to say your answer with different words than what you memorized. This way, you don't seem stiff and robotic, while making sure you beat all the key points in your response, especially if you get asked curveball questions. 32. Ask about opportunities for advancement in the company. This is good general career info for you, but it also hits a couple of competence triggers. This show that you plan to stick around. Very valuable to HR people, given how much time money they spend not just hiring, but also onboarding, training new employees. Have a plan. Most students aren't sure about what they want to do. You can stand out just with the simple fact that you put some thought into your future. Ambitions. Good companies like GoGetchons who wants to take on more responsibility in the company. 33. Don't discuss compensations or even job perks until you have an offer. Talking about a sensitive topic like cash in a high pressure situation make it like liar that you'll mess up. In fact, asking about pay and perks right off the bat might makes some interviewers question whether you really want to work for them or if you just in it for the money. If they ask you, however, how much did you make in your old job? Or how much compensation were you looking for? Here's what you should say. I think we could put off talking about compensation. Right now, I just want to see if they a good fit. RAM, competence trigger right there, and if they really press, instead of giving a single number, give them a range. This makes sure that you are not locked into one number and give you room for negotiation down the road. Anyways, even though taken negative well enough to get a pair of Blundstones for. Anyways, even though taken negative well enough to get a pair of Blundstones for 50 in Israel. I'm not an expert in high stakes negotiation, so check out this podcast episode for some general advice on negotiating, and then this one fair more in-depth advice. 34. Prepare 5 specific questions for the interviewer. The end of the interview, when the interviewer asks, so is there anything you want to ask me? This way many job candidates drop the ball. By coming prepared with question for the interviewer, you'll make you mark as a great candidate versus as just a good one. Ask specific questions that can be googled easily to add to the positive picture that they already have a few. Here are some examples. How did you get to have you right now? This builds a rapport with the interviewer, a good jumping off point for more commonalities. What are the qualities of successful interns in the past? This shows that your ambitions and that you want to be successful on the job too. If I get the job, what can I do to hit the ground running? This is an advanced question that shows you enthusiasm while also subtly planting in the interviewer mind the image of you working for them. In my interview at the accounting firm, I asked about the difference between two specific IT assurance methods that were maintained in the job descriptions. I wasn't afraid of looking incompetent because my question showed that I know what the methods were, but I wanted to learn more specific details about them. Post-interview 35. Send a thank you note email. This is the last thing that will set you apart from most candidates. 2 4 hours after the interview, send a thank you email to the person who organized the interview. And if they are not the one who did your interview, let them know how thankful you are to the interviewer for taking the time to talk about you. You can be sure that they'll pass you word enough. For interviews in a creative field like graphic design, prepare a few leave behinds for the interviewer small, useful tokens of your work that will remind them of you. After my interview, I emailed the recruiter to thank him for organization everything and asked him to forward my thank you email to the partners who interviewed me. I also sent thank you emails to my company, contact and the 2 summer students for helping me. And after getting the offer, I sent another update and thank you emails to them too. Conclusion: when you get to the hard job interviews, there are mind games there won before you step into the interviews room. And if these aren't enough, here are 97 more tips on stuff you can to do prepare for the big day. The truth is, if you will being called into an interview, the company or the hiring manager already thinks that you are just as qualified as the girl sitting next to you. What the interviewer is looking for is a human being they can count on to make the company better, or at least make them look good. Keeping that in mind, plus all of the tips in this blog post, you should be ready to crush your next interview. Thank you for watching, guys. This is a very big post. Thank you for watching. Bye.